Greetings and welcome back to Son of the Cinema. The film I'm going to review today is certainly one of my personal favorites, a real little gem from the 80s called Stand By Me. Now, Stand By Me is, I guess, seen as a coming of age film, and on this channel a few times I've reviewed coming of age movies, Hope and Glory, I'm a Cord, and this is the first American coming of age movie that I've done. And what makes this film so special is that, if you look at other coming of age movies, particularly in the American context, they're always kind of tinged with a lot of sentiment and nostalgia and kind of, feel good factor. And all those are still present in Stand By Me. But what marks it out from the other movies is that there's such an incredibly honest sense of and depiction of the pain of childhood and the wounds that are inflicted on children in childhood, and how those wounds forge us into the adults that we become. So it's the passage into adulthood. And this is shown in a very profound light in Stand By Me, because the age that is depicted is from 12 going into 13. So it is an absolutely vital transitional period. And the things that happen during that time mark us and shape us forever. I can certainly say that in my own case. And what's amazing about this movie is that it is based on the author's own transitional moment in his childhood. And ironically, that author is none other than Stephen King. Isn't that remarkable? So this Stand By Me is based on a short story that formed a compilation that King wrote, and it was called Different Seasons. And there were 4 short stories. And ironically, one of the other short stories was The Shawshank Redemption. And those two, and the Stand By Me short story was called The Body. And those two, ironically, are, in my opinion, the 2 best versions of King's works put to celluloid, without a doubt. The Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me. So what is the story about? It's about 4 friends in a little town called Castle Rock. And one of them discovers or overhears his older brother talking about a kid, Ray Brower, who supposedly has been hit by a train. And they want to go and discover the body so that they can become famous in their town and heroes. And so this little kid rushes back to his friends in the tree hut and says, if we can beat these older boys to it, we can become the heroes. And so they embark on this journey. But in this film, it's not about the destination. And for the boys, ultimately, it's not about the destination, i.e. finding the body and becoming heroes. It's the journey. It's the self-discovery and what they encounter on the journey, the truths about themselves that are revealed in this journey. It is such a profound movie, such a beautifully realized movie, such a poignant movie, devoid of all sentimentality. And I think that is thanks to all the elements, the cast, the script. Originally, the script was, or the story was discovered by Reynold Gideon and Bruce Evans, and they took it to Embassy Pictures, who wanted to produce it, and they wanted to get Adrian Lyne to direct it, because he was very big in the 80s. But he'd just come off 9.5 weeks, and so and he wanted a vacation over the time they wanted to shoot. And so they approached Rob Reiner, who had previously done Spinal Tap and a few other movies. And Rob Reiner does an absolutely brilliant job on this movie. He's actually gone on record and saying this is the most important film that he has ever made in his life. And he made a very, very important distinction and change from the book. Now, in the book, shows all 4 boys, and remember, this actually happened to Stephen King. He and his 4 friends actually discovered this dead body, and various other things in the story are totally 100% autobiographical. So you can actually see how this event shaped King as a writer. The macabre, the dark that he has constantly written about is rooted in this childhood trauma. So anyway, the important distinction that Rob Reiner made was that in the book it was just about all four boys, but he decided to focus on Gordy LeChance. And Gordy LeChance is the Stephen King character, the boy who becomes in the end a writer. And so he just thought it made much more sense to focus in on and make Gordy LeChance the central character, because it's his journey from boyhood to manhood and to become a writer. And of course, the boy becomes a man, becomes a writer, becomes Stephen King. And it was an inspired choice. The other inspired choice that Rob Reiner made was that he decided to, in films you often have voiceover narration, and often in movies it doesn't work. In some it does, and in this film it most definitely works. And he takes it a step further, where you actually see the narrator at the beginning of the end of the film, which is incredibly poignant. So the film opens and you see this middle-aged man in a car, and he reads about the death of this lawyer, Chris Chambers, who's obviously one of the four boys. And then he reminisces it was in the summer of 1959, and it goes back to the story. And you hear his narration throughout the film, but you don't see him. And at the end, you see him again. And this is incredibly poignant. So what makes this film so special? It's, as I mentioned, the script before, it is so real, so poignant, such a painful reflection of childhood trauma that these four boys go through. And the four characters are so beautifully written and developed, each with their distinct personalities. You have Gordy, the awkward, shy young boy who's harboring a terrible pain that his older brother was killed and the parents have never recovered, and really his father has just kind of shunned him and has no love for him. That's his kind of pain that he has to bear. Chris Chambers, the bad boy from the wrong side of the tracks, who believes that he's never going to amount to anything, who's always going to be seen through the eyes of, or through the kind of thing of his bad family. He's always going to be judged according to his family. The fat kid, Vern, who's constantly put on. And finally, but last but not least, Teddy DeChamp, this kind of the wackiest, craziest one of the bunch, whose terrible pain is his abusive father, whom he still loves, a Vietnam vet who kind of physically abused him and pushed his head against a stove and burnt his ear virtually off. But he still loves his father. He still idolizes his father. And these are not cliches. These are really fully bodied characters, embodied by a wonderful cast. You can't think of anyone else to actually play these roles. And Rob Reiner was brilliant in the sense that he cast actors who were exactly like their characters. River Phoenix, slightly older than the other boys, wise beyond his years, a father figure, but still has this kind of core of pain. And ironically, Chris Chambers is the only one in the story that dies. And River Phoenix is the only one out of the four boys that died. It's like it gives you goosebumps just to think about it. Died at the age of 23 of a drug overdose. So sad. So that in that light, the film is even more poignant. Particularly the ending when Chris Chambers disappears. It's just, you can't help but think of River Phoenix, and it's so sad. An actor of huge potential, gives an unbelievable performance in this film. Will Wheaton plays Gordy, but so all of these characters have these terrible, painful moments. But this does not mean that the film is this huge, heavy thing. It's not. It's got this incredible unbridled joy of children who, despite their childhood trauma, live beyond it in their fantasies, in their interactions with each other, in their camaraderie, in their humor. And this is what we do. This is what I did as a kid to live through my childhood trauma, is used humor. And it is such a delightful, joyous, nostalgic, and yet so at its heart, at its core, bittersweet movie. So these four kids go on this journey, and there's some hilarious moments, scenes that happen. one in a junkyard where they're faced with this deadly dog, the legend of Chopper, who's supposed to sick balls, but Chopper shows them that the legend is far removed from the reality. But even in that moment, this is how this movie swings on this wonderful pendulum. That one minute you've got this hilarious, them mocking Chopper, who's this harmless, toothless dog. And then the owner, Milo Pressman, coming out and say, oh, you kids, I'm going to sort you out, especially you with the loony out in togas, referring to Teddy Champ's father, and he just breaks him down. And he says, yeah, your father's in a nut house. And he just has a complete mental breakdown, Teddy Champ, and says, my father stormed the beaches of Normandy, you piece of shit, and he's just absolutely broken because he idolizes his father. And this is the incredible pendulum that this film swings on. It just goes from comedy to drama in a heartbeat, from joy to tragedy in a heartbeat. It's like the two sides of the same coin. It's so profound. There's another hilarious story where Gordy, of course, you see the beginnings of the writer coming, where he talks about the story of Lardass when they're around the campfire. And these campfire scenes are wonderful. It just encapsulates, the script is so brilliant. It captures this whole thing of what kids that age talk about, the most odd things, like, if Mickey's a mouse and, Pluto's a dog and Donald's a duck, what the hell is Goofy, it really brings back all those kind of conversations of childhood and what goes through a 12-year-old's mind. But, of course, the journey is not without its peril. There's the older kids gang led by a chilling Kiefer Sutherland, Ace Merrill, are also on the track of this dead body. And before they get there, there's a lot of hurdles they're going to have to get through, these boys. And it really is the passage from boyhood to manhood. And particularly for Gordy, who eventually breaks down when he sees the dead body. And he just says, why, Denny, why did you have to die? My father hates me. I'm no good. And Chris is like, you're not. He doesn't know you, I'm no good. And it is such a poignant scene. And earlier on, you have Chris Chambers' moment where he breaks down and talks about the milk money, that he stole and then tried to give it back. And the teacher just pocketed the money and didn't tell them that he brought it back. And the scene is so heartbreaking and so incredibly played. In fact, Rob Reiner tells a story where he actually went to River Phoenix and said, just think of a time in your life where an adult that you trusted let you down. And he came back and just like broke down and did this scene. It's so poignant. And in the end, Gordy faces up to these, not only faces up to his own trauma, but faces up to Ace Merrill, and that is his transition into manhood. It is such a wonderful, heartwarming, heartbreaking movie. Beyond words, it's so profound. Every actor talks about dreaming of a film that, in their career, one film that defines them, that was like the most important film that they'll be remembered for, and how incredible that these boys are remembered for a film that these actors now are looking back, a film they made when they were 12 years old. They've never been able to recapture that. Incredible. And the film ends with the older Gordy reflecting and says, I never had friends like the ones I had when I was 12 years old. Does anyone? What a heartbreaking, tender, vulnerable look into the heart of 12-year-olds going into 13. Into that, Stephen King actually said to Rob Reiner after the viewing, he was so moved. He said, "This is the greatest film ever made of my work." And the film went on to win, or should I say, was nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay. It was nominated. Rob Reiner was nominated for Golden Globe, and the film for Best Drama, of course, didn't win. But it has gone down as one of the greatest films of all time. It really, really is one of the most honest, heart-aching visions of childhood, but also so entirely memorable and nostalgic. And Thomas Delruth's cinematography is superb. It just gives this sheen of kind of warm, nostalgic light to the film, gloss, and yet he uses also like darkened images for the flashbacks and dream sequences where Denny has this terrible, or should I say Gordy has this thing where they're at Denny's funeral and the father puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "It should have been you, Gordon." Just these moments, these heartbreaking moments. Such a poignant movie, and all held together by a superb soundtrack by Jack Nishoff, the greatest songs of the late 50s. Lollipop, Stand By Me, of course, the title song, Great Balls of Fire, many, many, many more. The whole cast, I mean, Marshall Bell as the father, chilling performance. Ace Merrill, played by Kiefer Sutherland, unforgettable. You could see the strains of Jack Bauer. This film is just perfect. The only thing I would say is that the swearing kind of is anachronistic for the 1950s, but it works for a modern audience because boys do have foul mouths at that age. Go and see this movie if you haven't. It is truly, truly unforgettable.